I have never seen more urgent a requirement to have, including my new employer, SailPoint, every one of our vendors need to do a better job with shared signals and ensuring that those items all event together. I think the SOC today, it has become a really, really noisy environment, and making sure that we can reduce that signal to noise ratio and really taking action on the key items that are coming forward. And the only way that I think we're ever going to get there is with really clean data.
When you asked me the question before we got up here, my first thought is like, oh my God, that would be my fantasy, to be able to start from scratch and not have to deal with the tech debt and the security debt and all the baggage. This is the problem everyone's having, right, is the tech debt. And you see a huge difference between the younger organizations that are cloud native as opposed to ones like, oh, I don't know, my own employer that will always have a massive on-prem footprint. We're probably going to have a mainframe for a very, very long time, if not forever. And those are the challenges that are hard enough to remediate without all the disruption that's going on. So for me, given the chance to start from scratch, absolutely, I would look at buying.
I've never actually switched. I've always built hybrid because I always believe you have skin in the game. When you fully outsource, no MSSP has your best interest as primary. They have their best interest as primary, and that's fair. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing. They're in business to make money and be their company. You're their product, so they have to work through it. And without the skin in the game, you can use them for that low level, handle the churn, deal with the cycling of employees, but when it gets up into the escalations where it becomes much more critical for what your organization is going to suffer or your customers are going to have the effect of, you want somebody in there that's doing it.
When you consolidate around strategic partners, you are creating you're introducing pervasive vendor stacks. And unless you're looking at your pervasive vendors in different ways from everybody else, you have a half-baked resiliency plan at best.
But we're putting entry-level people in front of data points that affect the future of our companies. Could collapse. Let's look at Target. Target suppressed those alerts twice to the SOC, 80 million credit cards walk out the front door. It is fundamentally flawed. We also take the best and we keep them there. We take the good, we promote them. We take the bad, we get them out. So the best end up leaving anyways because they want a better job. So we're churning bodies in there in a cycle that just makes absolutely zero sense against this. And this is why AI becomes truthfully the answer.
Good afternoon, everybody. So this is going to be an interesting session that's actually very near to my heart because I've built several SOCs during my career. I've also moved them and in the process of, doing a hybrid as well. So, hi, I'm Sandra Liepkalns.
Hi, I'm Matt Fangman, Field CTO at SailPoint.
Bill Harmer, still at Supabase.
Vivien Suen, Principal Architect for Cybersecurity at TD Bank.
Kalyan Chakravarthy, or Casey to be short, like the Casey and the Sunshine Band. I'm the CIO for Electrical Safety Authority, as well as like VP for eSafe, which is the non-regulated division of ESA.
So I think a lot of us are struggling with the challenge. Do we build? Do we buy? Do we do a hybrid? And then throw in AI into that as well. And there's so many different challenges that we have. We're trying to reduce costs, we're trying to optimize, we're trying to do this with less people every single day. So my first question is, if you're starting, if you were starting from scratch, would you build versus buy? And I'm going to hand that over to Vivien, and then Matt, you can chime in as well.
Thanks. So when you asked me the question before we got up here, my first thought is like, oh my God, that would be my fantasy, to be able to start from scratch and not have to deal with the tech debt and the security debt and all the baggage. Before I joined TD, I was with IBM for a long time and spent quite a few years with IBM Security. And this is the problem everyone's having, right, is the tech debt. And you see a huge difference between the younger organizations that are cloud native as opposed to ones like, oh, I don't know, my own employer that will always have a massive on-prem footprint. We're probably going to have a mainframe for a very, very long time, if not forever. And those are the challenges that are hard enough to remediate without all the disruption that's going on. So for me, given the chance, to start from scratch, absolutely, I would look at buying because you have so many options out there right now, and you kind of get to choose your entry point on how much maturity and automation you want instead of being saddled with some of the challenges now. So just an example, an organization, like a large national bank, probably has a data movement problem, probably has a lot of challenges in how we orchestrate data across the enterprise with respect to like security telemetry. How do we enrich, normalize, deduplicate, filter, routes, yada, yada. And most people are struggling with this. If you could start from scratch and not deal with legacy networks, build a modern data pipeline, like that alone could be transformational to security operations.
You've made some incredible points there because I know the legacy because I've had to deal with that as well. And then being cloud first currently, it was a lot easier to deal with. Matt?
It is so interesting to see the industry evolve. Like you, I spent a long time at this small software company in Redmond, Washington, and might have launched this product called Office 365, and it might have also had the daunting task of listening to every CISO and CIO yell at me about their data. So it is really interesting to hear your perspective, and I could not agree with you more. Starting from scratch, even with all the infrastructure that's in place, the challenge just comes down to data cleanliness, data movement, and the shared signals. If there's one thing that I would also reinforce here is I have never seen more urgent a requirement to have, including my new employer, SailPoint, every one of our vendors need to do a better job with shared signals and ensuring that those items all event together. I think the SOC today, it has become a really noisy environment, and making sure that we can reduce that signal to noise ratio and really taking action on the key items that are coming forward. And the only way that I think we're ever going to get there is with really clean data. And I'm with you. I'd probably start from scratch.
And what about the AI component? I mean, that would really help because there is so much noise that you have to filter out and try and figure out what is actually real. Training your systems, training your staff, I guess training agents as well to figure out what is real and what's not. Yeah. Right?
I was listening to Victor's last session on data poisoning, and that really opened my eyes to hear, wow, Paolo's really doing some thinking around how this data really needs to maintain purity associated with it. So I think that is a factor that everybody's going to need to look into.
Yeah, 100%. I really enjoyed it.
I think if you look at the way we have traditionally built SOCs, right, that's an entry point. It's sort of that entry-level role that people come in, they put their time in the SOC and move on. But we're putting entry-level people in front of data points that affect the future of our companies. That could collapse us. Look at Target. Target suppressed those alerts twice to the SOC, 80 million credit cards walk out the front door. It is fundamentally flawed. We also take the best and we keep them there. We take the good, we promote them. We take the bad, we get them out. So the best end up leaving anyways because they want a better job. So we're churning bodies in there in a cycle that just makes absolutely zero sense against us. And this is why AI becomes truthfully the answer to it. I'm lucky. I'm Greenfield. I have no SOC right now, and I'm building one. And it's going to be AI-based. It has to be. We need the speed because the speed that the attacks come in, there's no human that's going to figure that out.
Yeah, I've been really happy to see the emphasis on data poisoning and model poisoning that I've seen so far today. Because when I first started looking at AI security, like just me personally, my first thought was the data and the model poisoning, and that was what I was freaking out in the first few months. And of course, recently, a lot of the focus is around jailbreak, prompt injection, super important. But I'm really glad to see the dialogue shifting to get back to data poisoning and model poisoning, because I think that's the really insidious one. We can't control our software supply chain. We have to control our model supply chain, the data set supply chain. It's exponential.
So, Casey, have you had to change from one to another, and what was the rationale? And same with Bill as well.
Okay.
You can
First
chime
of
in.
all, I don't know what SOC is and what the legacy is. I've never experienced those two. Just kidding. I've been a CIO for multiple organizations, from a small organization to a large organization. I feel like when you're changing, or when you're having that discussion, my simplistic thing is about looking at it. It depends upon the organization, and it is 3 key factors, and what I call it as the SME. So it is the size of the organization. What size are you in? Because you need to have the right skill set to have a SOC to really, and keep that skill set and maintain that skill set. So that's why it is the size and skill set part of it is first one. The second of it is maturity of the organization. You might have a large organization, but if your technical maturity, when you talk about legacy, modernization, all this, if you don't have the maturity, if you have to really cultivate that maturity onto it, then you're not building it on your own. And last but not the least is about the environment, and that I call it as where people talk about technology, technology, technology. But when you're making these decisions, it is the culture of the organization that's very important. That's what I call it as the environment. Because it depends upon the sector. You can be in a heavily regulated sector, then you're forced to build it yourself because of your regulation, because of your what you have been mandated. So once you take these 3 into consideration, for sure, if you have the maturity, it is about where I talk about is core competencies. If your company's core competency is not about cybersecurity, you are definitely going and buying it on that. The same way, if your company's core competency, and if you are an insurance, if you are a bank, if you are any of these sectors, you want to keep some of the things inside. So these are the considerations. When I get to that kind of a decisions, those are the parameters that I would take it and say, depending upon all these things, that decision is made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've never actually switched. I've always built hybrid, because I always believe you have skin in the game. When you fully outsource, no MSSP has your best interest as primary. They have their best interest as primary, and that's fair. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing. They're in business to make money and be their company. You're their product, so they have to work through it. And without the skin in the game, you can use them for that low level, handle the churn, deal with the cycling of employees, but when it gets up into the escalations where it becomes much more critical for what your organization is going to suffer or your customers are going to have the effect of, you want somebody in there that's doing it. I think, again, that's why greenfielding it now, I probably wouldn't go hybrid. I would go AI. I could bring in my own model. I could trust my own model, put it in Bedrock, run it, know that it's not getting poisoned there, or at least have the ability to watch and monitor it, and use that to do my core filtration, which means I can put more into it. And that truly is, it's about the volume of signal now.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot on my team about when and where we want to place in-house judge models in our layered defenses. And we're at a point right now where, for things like content safety, the market's not quite there yet, right, for buying a third-party model to handle your content safety. But it's gonna catch up. So the question became, what do we do then? Do we still want to have in-house judge models? And the thought that we had was, actually, we probably do, because there's certain things that only we will be able to control, like, say, a chatbot for customer interactions. We want to own the tone of the conversation. We want to tune that model. We don't want to buy it. So it starts off about safety, and then it becomes about tone and customer experience. So there's some of those things that you really have to, I don't want to say guardrails because that term gets overused, but you want to kind of put that fence around, you know what, these are the things that I am going to own and that I'm going to do in-house. But there has to be a really concerted agreement from leadership right now where this is the idea that we're socializing. That's one of the things we're talking about.
That's what I was talking about, culture, right? Like
Yeah.
culture is very, very important, like where the tone with which that you're interacting with your people, like whether it is internally, externally, that's defined by your organizational culture. Because people really, really talk about, when you talk about security, when you talk about customer interaction, they talk about technology, but like it is not about as much as the technology, but like it is about the culture with which what you want to portray your organization to the external world.
You can get a fast, accurate answer from a chatbot and have a terrible customer experience.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not a fan of chatbots personally.
No, me neither.
No, I still sometimes like the human touch, and I'm still kind of old school. I pick up the phone and call people as well, just to have that.
If you want to try an interesting one, try Vercells. Their chatbot is got really, really good NPS scores.
Excellent. We'll have to give that a try. So, putting your eggs into one basket, going with almost just one vendor. What are your thoughts surrounding that?
I personally would, as one of the vendors on the stage, I'd probably say you have to have a deep partnership around and ongoing partnership discussion on requirements. I think right now, any of the security vendors that are out there, there are a handful of design partners that I've been working with a handful of our customers that are incredibly invaluable. Because to your point, we will never get the level of details and genericize a process. There are items that we need to build that are specific and bespoke to individual, either verticals or individual customers, and only with that level of partnership that you can really sit down, have that conversation, build that into your design plan for your roadmap. It's just one of those items that I just find invaluable.
Yeah, I've always been a proponent of having that multi-layer approach, and because tools do fail. They work on different principles. One will catch something that another one will miss. And you hate to be in the spot where it gets missed.
Yeah, there's good places where you can look at a vendor and say, okay, the 6 pieces, they work together, they're built together, makes sense to have them. But finding that secondary one to layer over, because it will. Like, the world breaks, and there's nothing wrong with that. We just need to make sure that we minimize that blast radius.
Yeah. I am not a fan of vendor concentration risk at all. Like, I'm an architect, so I'm the one who's always agitating for more heterogeneity in our defenses. And when we look at the breadth and depth of defense that the modern enterprise needs, you need strong architects who can understand your security architecture and guide you in deciding, okay, where do we leverage our strategic partnerships with our closest vendors, and where do we want to deliberately and purposefully introduce agnosticism or heterogeneity into the tech stack. My team will be rolling their eyes if they ever hear a replay of this, because this is what I say like every single day, that we have to be more diverse. We have to do something that's agnostic. It's fine if we go all in some areas, but we have to have that agnostic answer.
I agree with you 100%, because I've seen the controls fail.
Yeah.
In my past lives, I've seen that happen time and time again, where we were lucky that we had that secondary in place because it caught it, it stopped it, and it was one of those moments.
Interestingly enough, when you talk about sort of that safety net, the catch, the get-through break, the one place that we, I think, as security professionals seem to turn a blind eye is in when it doesn't necessarily need one. And the best example of that was the travel industry with CrowdStrike. People ran CrowdStrike on everything. I don't know a single person, a single organization that said, I'm going to do the defense in depth and run CrowdStrike on 50% and SentinelOne on the other 50%.
I mean, a lot of people are talking about that after the fact, right? And this is the thing that was interesting about the CrowdStrike incident, because in hindsight, yeah, we have a single vendor with kernel access to everything,
Everything on
that's
the-
pushing updates from the cloud that we
Direct.
don't catch or verify. But the day before, if I had walked into our CISO's office and said, hey, you know what we should be doing? We should be downloading and testing every patch we get from CrowdStrike. Like, I would have been thrown out of the room, right? So it's also clear in hindsight, but that flies in the face of the economics of modern cloud and cloud security. Nobody would do that. Nobody's doing that now.
I know.
Yeah.
It also shows that not everybody's processes are perfect as well. You know, when it
100%.
comes from QA to CAB to all of those things. And, you know, we have to start thinking about those from our own perspective as well. You've had these huge disasters that have happened, and they've happened in our own environments as well, where we let something go, and luckily we can either roll it back, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'll provide a bit of a contrarian opinion on
Sure.
this. Like to say, first of all, like I don't like the word vendor. Like I always call them our partners because like they are partners in our success or in failure. And where I used to say for our strategy is always, like my strategy is always like having a box of like where like everybody needs to have a responsibility and like to say, okay, this is your part of the job, so put them in the boxes. And when I used to say single throat to choke, my HR people told me I shouldn't be saying that. So now I changed it to single hand to shake, which sounds much better, part of it. But like where there is a limit, because like you are limited by your budget, there are practical considerations. Yes, like everything that like we want to do, we want to test, we want to do all these things. But there is a practicality of it like that comes into the picture to say you need to trust your partners that they are going to deliver. And like there are consequences of not delivering. And then put them into buckets to say, because if you are having too much of partners into it, the interoperability becomes very difficult, as well as the level of responsibility and accountability drops down dramatically. So that is the reason from a practical purpose, you want to really create that boxes. What do you want? This is your definite output, that like racy kind of a thing that is coming in to really say, this is what like you're accountable for, and this is what like I'll give you as my partner, and this is what I expect from you. Whether you are doing your backup, you are doing your stuff, and like things are going to fail. It is going to happen. Even if you have multi-vendors, things are going to fail. That is the fact of life, that like where things are going to break. But you need to have a plan in place, and you need to have a strategy in place to really say, this is how my structure would look like, so that like you give it top down that this is our approach.
But that's the thing though, right? When you consolidate around strategic partners, you are creating you're introducing pervasive vendor stacks. And unless you're looking at your pervasive vendors in different ways from everybody else, you have a half-baked resiliency plan at best.
Yeah, absolutely. Like where when you're handing over some of your responsibility, this is the set of responsibilities that you have, and you're asking your partner to do X, Y, and Z, you need to be very clear what are the expectations. It is not about what the industry thinks, but like what your organization needs, and like how are you measuring, and how are you constantly communicating with them to say, this is what are my standards onto it. That's where vendor management becomes a key role when you are having like at least 6 to 7. Like I'm not saying everything needs to be done in one. There can be at least 10 hands to shake, not more than that for sure.
Okay. So what about just one vendor?
Just one vendor for everything?
Just one vendor.
You got no pricing, you've got no leverage.
No.
Got nothing.
No.
They should
my
leave
color
my IT
coding,
then.
my color coding soul rejects that.
I think mine would too. So I think we've covered off the key items today in our questions. Final thoughts from each of you.
I'll go. If I look at one thing right now, especially in light of where the SOC is today and how are they instrumented related to AI agents, I look up and go, every single customer I'm engaged with right now, really, if you ask them how many agents do you have operating in your environment today, they'll give you a variety of different numbers depending on the role, and every one of them are wrong. So just doing discovery across the team, cloud operations team, the security team, the AI team. This is the first time I've seen it in my history in the industry, that we really needed to work together to at least start doing one, just doing an inventory, and then two, assigning owners. That alone, I think, would help us all together to start understanding how big a challenge this is going to be.
Well, one of my items that I think about, going forward with the agents is how do you onboard and offboard them, right? That's going to be a big item as well.
Yeah, especially if they're vendor specific. If they're not your agents and they come from a vendor, you do now have an onboard, offboard. We are bad at that with people. We will be worse with that on agents, because agents will spawn agents, and you've got to have a process for that. I think it'll be interesting in contracts as to who owns what when vendor relationships start to sever. And it may be, I think that's why from a greenfield perspective, I am looking at building it all myself.
Sure.
I'm lucky, I'm at an engineering company. These guys can build anything. But it does become cost, efficacy, support, the long-term roadmap on it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Now I have the zombie agent, 3 a.m. anxiety nightmare fuel to think about.
I'm sorry.
You're welcome.
No, it's a very real thing. It's a very real thing. I think that, regardless of whether you're leaning towards build or buy, you need architecture. Yeah. Shameless plug for my profession.
Shameless plug. I might just steal you away and hire you.
You can try. I know someone who will fight you for that. But you need architecture. Because your architecture is where you can bring together your roadmap and the operationalization of the tech stack. You have the best tools. If you're not operationalizing them well, you're going to fall on your face. So you need that North Star vision. You need the architecture, and you need business architecture, not just technical or solution architecture, because that's going to show you where you're aligned with the capabilities and the maturity you expect to deliver yourself, and where you need to bring in the external expertise. And I work for TD. We have like over 300 architects at TD because we're large and we have that luxury. Not everybody does, I understand. But regardless, you have someone in your organization who knows business. You have someone who is able to think abstractly and pragmatically. You have those people even if they don't have the architect job title. So you pull them together and you get some business architecture and enterprise architecture together. That's what's going to help you make informed decisions.
Yeah, so whether it is SOC or any other thing, right? Like when we are talking about build or buy, in my opinion, like I call it from my perspective, like it is a 3C plus C concept. Like what those 3 C's are, like for me, is about clarity of like what actually are you doing? What do you want to achieve? What is there? And the second is your capabilities. What is the capabilities that you have and you can maintain? It is not about like I can go and hire a few people right now, but are you going to maintain? Because people are there is an attrition in this kind of an industry. So what is the capability part of it? And then the third, like where like I can't stress enough on the culture part of it, like where like it's very important what your organizational culture is top down. And last but not the C, like where the big C that is overarches but like that is the most silent, is the cost part of it. Because that drives your decision. That is at the end of the day when you are reporting, when you're sitting in the boardroom, it's not about like whether your architecture is silent, you want to do it. But like the question when I'm answering to the board is like how much is it going to cost? And can you do it for less? So that is where like at the end of the day, it's business. Yeah. So that's where 3C plus C is what like I look at, whether it's a SOC, whether it is security, whether it is IT, any of the things, that's where the basic pillars are founded on.
Okay, excellent. Well, I wanted to thank, anything else? No? Well, I wanted to thank all of you. I mean, I think it's really interesting talking about build versus buy, but we've added so much to this. It's not just about build versus buy, it's about thinking about the future. It's about thinking about AI, about agents, about the signals, the architecture. There's so many different components to this that feeds into the decision whether you're architecting something to build, buy, or a hybrid solution that is now AI enabled. So thank you to all of you.
Okay.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.